Okay, so what we are going to be doing today is a golf club build. We're going to build a set of irons, but it's going to be a little different. I think a lot of people are still under the impression that you need a lot of stuff, a lot of special equipment, a lot of special tools to be able to do what we do here. So today, I'm going to build a set of irons, and we're not going to use any expensive equipment. We're not going to use any special golf tools. We're just going to use basic stuff you can get from the hardware store to assemble this set of irons. So let's go. Hi everyone, welcome to the Mobile Club Maker. I'm AJ. I hope you're having a wonderful day. So we are going to dive right into this iron build. We've got the Callaway forged raw heads that you hopefully saw a couple videos ago when we did the paint fill video. The winning color choice from the greatest number of people was this yellow and green paint fill, so that's what we went ahead and did for the whole set of irons. We've got some Modus shafts and some Golf Pride grips we're going to put on them, and it should be a really good looking golf club. But really, the main point of this video is really to show you that you don't need expensive equipment. You don't need all these specialized golf club making tools. You can do this stuff with very basic hardware store equipment, very basic hardware store tools and supplies, and a little bit of know-how. So let's get going. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna need to do is we're gonna prep all our pieces. So what does that mean? We're gonna be prepping the heads. Now these heads have obviously already been pulled. If they had not been pulled, you would have needed to pull the heads and then just clean out the hosels, get all the old residue of the old epoxy out with any sort of little metal brush that will fit down in that hosel. At this point, because that's all been done, all I'm gonna do is get some acetone on a Q-tip and wipe that around the inside of the hosel, get rid of any residual, just sort of dirt, grime, oil, grease, anything that might hinder the epoxy's ability to really give you a good, strong bond. Okay, once we've prepped the heads, we're also gonna go and prep the shafts. So that means in this case, these are 355 taper tip shafts. So no tip cutting, we're just gonna sand the tips, and then we're gonna go and cut them to length, so we have our final lengths all ready to go, and then we can figure out our swing weighting, that kind of stuff in the next step. Okay, so all we're going to do now is measure out the length of the clubs and cut the shafts. Go ahead, dry fit it together, measure it out here. This is a pitching wedge. I wanted a 1/2 inch over standard, so that's going to be 36 1/4. So we're going to cut it at 36. To cut it, we're just going to use this little simple pipe cutter you can get at the hardware store for $10 to $15. You're just going to slide the shaft in here, line up the little cutter with the center of our line, about right there. Give it a turn, couple quarter turns, and just kind of spin it around a few times. Then you're going to go give it another turn, tighten it a little bit more, spin it around a few more times. Give it another turn, spin it around a few more times. And probably one more turn. There it goes. And pull that off just like that. Pull that little piece off like that. Okay, so we've prepped the heads, we've prepped the shafts. The next step is going to be swing weighting these clubs to make sure they have a consistent feel all the way through the set. Now, I could use my swing weight scale, but again, we're not going to use any of those tools in this video today. So what we're going to use, and hopefully you saw in my last video, is an online swing weight calculator. So what we need, a gram scale, a measuring tape, and your cell phone. Okay, so we're just going to use the 7-iron as the test club here to basically figure out the rest of the set. I've already gone ahead and I've weighed out every one of these heads and written down what each of them weighs. So at this point, we're now going to basically just dry assemble the club with the head on it. I went ahead and put a ferrule on just to help with the weighting. And I'm just going to use this cut grip, which is basically a 50-gram grip that I can slide over the end and act as a placeholder until I put these other grips on. The weight's going to be the same, but this will help us get the right swing weight. Put that on there, put that on there. Now for the online swing calculators, again, we're going to need two measurements. First, we need a static weight of the club. Zero that out. And we've got 421 grams. Next, we need to find the balance point. Again, you basically do this with your finger. You can, if you want to get a little more exact, you can do what I did in the video and get a shaft or something else to have it rest on to be perfectly exact. But we're going to just go ahead and do this with my finger and just get it rocking to where it is right. Try and get it right on the bone of my finger. Get it right where it's parallel to the ground. Right about there. And we're just going to put a mark. Just a little dot. Okay, at this point, I can pull this head off. I don't need that there. We're just going to measure from the end of the grip to this line right here. And we get 72.3. So we plug in those numbers, 72.3 for the balance point, 421 for the static weight, and we get a swing weight right around between D0 and D1. Okay, so once we know the swing weight of one of these clubs, we can basically just do some simple math and get the swing weight of all the other clubs based off of the head weights. You figure you're going to want a 7-gram progression through each of the heads to have a uniform swing weight change so everything stays constant. So basically it's just a little bit of math based off of what the head weights were before and adding or subtracting a little bit of weight to get everything in line so you have 7-gram increments through the set. Okay, I'm going to be using this tour set epoxy today. Cures a little bit faster than the 24-hour epoxy, but still has plenty of time. You could do, you know, as many clubs as you really wanted to with a batch of this, assuming you just sort of had all your ducks in a row before you started. So we're going to squeeze this out, we're going to add in some shafting beads, and we're going to start epoxying everything together. Just a couple little spoonfuls like that. Okay, so first we're just going to put a little epoxy in the head. Again, don't use too much, just enough to just sort of get a little epoxy coating the surfaces. Less is more. And then we'll go ahead, put a little epoxy on here. Slide the ferrule on. At this point, we're going to grab one of our 4-gram weights. We'll just go ahead, just put a little bit of epoxy right there on the weight. Why not? And drop that in there. Go ahead, slide this up a little bit. Put a little more epoxy on here. Again, just making sure we get everything with a little bit of epoxy on it, just a thin coat everywhere. And then we're just going to put it together. Tap this down. And then we just want to make sure we get our shaft logos the way we want them. This shaft does have logos, so we want to make sure that they are turned down in this case. Just like that. We're going to wipe off the excess epoxy. Just like that. And this guy is ready to go sit down and dry. Okay, the clubs are dry. The epoxy is completely hard. So we are now going to turn down this ferrule, put the grip on, and we'll be ready to go. So we're going to put the club back into the shaft clamp, and I'm going to show you a neat little trick I just figured out, or I just decided to do, that will help if you are dealing with any sort of club finish that is not chrome or brushed, where you might have either a dark finish or this finish that's raw that you don't want to necessarily scrape it away with the sandpaper. So I'm going to show you what I did here. We're going to lock this into the vise. And as you can see, I've got it basically right up against the edge of the vise clamp. So the ferrule is right up against it. What I'm going to do now is just get a piece of medium grit sandpaper, and I'm going to cut it so it's the exact same length as my ferrule. What that now gives me is I can go ahead, use this piece of sandpaper, just sort of let it run up against the edge of the pad here, and I don't have to worry about, one, I don't have to worry about inadvertently scraping the shaft with the sandpaper, and two, I don't have to inadvertently or worry about inadvertently scraping the finish on the head, because this piece of sandpaper basically is the exact same width as that ferrule. Okay, now we're just going to feel for anywhere it feels like it's still a little bit too high. Right there it feels a little high. Good. You can see it right there is a little high. Okay, once you've got it all evened up, switch to your more fine grit sandpaper, and we're just going to smooth out those rough edges. Okay, now we're just going to get a little acetone on a paper towel and shine that ferrule back up. As gentle, as light as you can be when you're brushing the ferrule with the acetone. That's going to give you the best, cleanest, shiniest looking ferrule. Is just very gentle pressure, just like that. And there you go. Ferrule's all set. Let's put the grip on it and we'll be good to go. Okay, we finished. We put all the clubs together. We turned down the ferrules. We put the grips on, and they look really good. Again, the whole point of this video is to show you you don't need expensive equipment. You don't need elaborate club making tools. You can get away with just using basic things like sandpaper, acetone, a tape measure, a basic vise with some sort of shaft clamp. Very simple, inexpensive stuff. I think all in, if you were living, in a vacant building and you had no equipment of any kind, no tools of any kind, and you had to buy all this stuff, we're probably talking about less than $140, less than $150 for everything. And that's including the vise, that's including the tape measure, that's including all that stuff, which very likely you probably already have some of that stuff around the house anyway. So it's going to be much less expensive. But as you can see, just using those basic tools, you can get a professional quality finish. Now, obviously, if you're trying to build 10 sets of irons a day, then this isn't really going to work for you. You need some more elaborate, more expensive power equipment to help speed this along, because yes, this does take longer if you're turning down ferrules by hand or if you're cutting the shafts by hand, all that sort of thing. But if you're just wanting to build a set of irons on your own for yourself or for a friend, this is obviously just as good as the more elaborate, expensive equipment. It'll take you a little longer, but the end result, if you take your time and know what you're doing, will be every bit as good. Also, by the way, just as a note, I went ahead and I checked all the swing weights on my swing weight scale afterward, and everything was basically spot on. So just using the swing weight calculator and then doing some simple math, we got all our swing weights where we wanted them to be. We didn't even need the swing weight scale. So one more thing that you probably don't need to worry about if you don't want to buy a swing weight scale: if you've got that tape measure, if you've got a gram scale, you can figure out swing weights. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please go down below, hit that little thumbs up button. Also, if you haven't, please subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon so you can be alerted when I post new videos. I'm on Instagram. You can find me at Mobile Club Maker. If you have questions, if you have comments, please leave them down below as well. We will see you next time.